Good morning. Thanks to Intrigue Summit for having me today. Very excited to be speaking here. And thanks all for coming. My name is James. I work at Pulsar. So why am I working at Pulsar? To give you a bit of an insight into who I am. I left university, thought I wanted to be a chef, tried that out, fell flat on my bum, didn't work at all. So then got a job at ITV, where I sold an advertising space for ITV, mainly around interactive formats. Did that for 3 years and then moved into the world of social data. Always had a passion for social data. Being a 90s baby, I kind of grew up with social media and was fascinated by understanding human behavior at a grand scale. Very ethnographic kind of idea, but also the narcissism that features on the social media. Everyone's obsessed with themselves. Really kind of resonated with me, I suppose. So that's why I'm here talking to you today. And I'm here to talk to you about how to use social data to bulletproof your marketing and creative campaigns. So today's the 27th of April. Happy Friday. I did a quick check on our new tool Trends to see what was trending on the 27th of April. Turns out it's Freedom Day, which is great. It's also National Cat Hairball Awareness Day. Niche, very unrelated. But it's also National Story Day in America. So today I'm going to tell you a story. And the story using social data. Awesome. So to start with, who are Pulsar? So Rupert Bedell, who was speaking before on that panel, one of the things that he said was you can use social media to understand conversations. It's like a window to your customers' conversations. That's exactly what we help you to do. So what you can do is you can use our platform, which we provide, or we can do it for you, and you can understand and analyze conversations that are happening across a number of different social media sources and also in online media. We help you get to the heart of the consumer, help you to understand culture. How can we understand what people are saying before you make that decision around a campaign? So before a PR campaign, a marketing campaign, a creative campaign, whatever it might be. So that's us. But why social data? So for me, there are 5 reasons why you should use social data for your research before you make the decision around your campaign. To start with, it's quick. So all tools out there will allow you to understand live dashboards. So dashboards that will bring in live data into the platform. Or if you prefer, you can run historical searches. And historical searches will be in the platform between 30 to 90 seconds. So pretty instant. Not like running a survey, which could take months. Secondly, it's granular. So you can run a data set on understanding how people are saving money. And you can then drill down that information using, well, on Pulsar, over 32 different ways. From gender to conversation to time. Even as Iran was talking about, you can understand a micro-influencer audience. So you can look at a list of influencers and you can then break it down by, let's say, 0 to 10,000 followers who've got an engagement rate of more than 2%. Very quick for you to be able to cut through the noise to get to your influencer list. So it's granular. Number 3, it's massive. So there are more than 500 million images shared on Instagram every day. Social networks are growing and growing, so you can understand human behavior at a vast scale, never before seen. Number 4, we're on to the fact that it is cheap. So, and that's kind of the same as many other forms of data, like Google search data, is that you can understand information cheaply, as opposed to running a big offline research project, which could cost tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. With social data, it's much cheaper. And then the 5th thing, it's volunteered information. So instead of running a survey or a focus group where you're asking people guarded questions, with social data, people are volunteering this information. And they're being very honest about it, which often results in some hilarity. Now, I'm going to show you an example right now of something that I saw recently, which resulted in myself laughing quite a bit. This is a post on the British Milk Council's Twitter page. I'll let you read that. Just been called into the office to be told that British Milk Council is shutting down all channels. I'm out of a job Something about the misuse of data higher up. I've changed the password and they're not having the account back. Now, this was the social media manager at the British Milk Council. What they'd failed to do was to track his account or her account, understand the logins. So they still had access. They finally got access and they responded with, Jason, log out of this account now or I'll contact Twitter support. And then he responded, or she responded, with the best burn I've seen in a long time. Awesome. I mean, that is probably the best burn I have ever seen. And then continued to go on a real tirade of posts on Twitter. This was particularly funny. Very good indeed. Now, I'm going to ruin it now. This is not a real account. This is a spoof account. This is a bit of, I suppose, clever marketing done by the British Milk Council. It's worth checking it out. It's @BritishMilk on Twitter. And you can see a whole tirade of different posts. And it's gathered real traction online. And it's this clever kind of marketing which you can do on social media to really gather traction with an alternative audience. So before I tell you, I said I was going to tell you a story. The story is for the second half of the talk. Before I do, I'm going to tell you a bit about some theory that we've done internally at Pulsar to understand how to make your creative and marketing bulletproof. So this slide here is a result of some research that we've done internally. We called it Jobs to be Done. It's on our website. What we did is we got a load of our own clients, a load of people who weren't our clients, and a load of people who were considering using social listening or social intelligence tools. And then we asked them, you know, what do they do to research a problem and how do they use social data to do it? And what it came down to is these 5 steps. So firstly, you'll receive a brief from a client which will give you instructions on how they want you to solve a problem. And then secondly, you'll then use social data to find, or other sources, to find trends that you can use for your campaign. Try and find little golden pieces of nuggets that you can then use for your creative or your planning. Then secondly, through Pulsar or other forms, you could then focus in on these trends to understand them in greater detail. How can you focus in and explore those actionable insights, those behaviors, and those moments? Fourthly, you can then immerse yourselves in that trend. What else can we find out? Can we scope in further? Can we look at the gender splits? Can we look at how students are talking versus parents, for example? And then finally, when we've got that watertight, that bulletproof creative, that campaign, we can then launch it and show it to the client and win those extra units. To show this really in the story, I'm going to talk to you about unicorns. So my niece is 4 years old, and she's obsessed with unicorns, absolutely obsessed. She's got unicorn bag, unicorn wallpaper, unicorn everything. And I was walking through John Lewis before Christmas, looking for Christmas presents, and I saw unicorn gin. It's even managed this obsession to span to adults. We've now got unicorn gin. So I'm going to use that for my story. Let's say that the CEO of Unicorn Gin, who you've just won, comes into your office and goes, "Marketing team, help me to sell more unicorn tears. That's what I want you to do." Okay, it's a big ask. You respond, and this is you looking very happy, by the way. This is a happy chap. "Sure, we can help you. What's trending in gin at the moment? How can we use that for our campaign? What's trending right now?" And they respond with, "I don't know." It seems that unicorn tears also produces you to have a lack of imagination. But you catch my drift. This is not going to be an exact scenario, but there might be something a little on the lines that you might experience. So how can we use social data to help the CEO of Unicorn Tears? To start with, remember we've got those 4 things: find, focus, immerse, and show. To start with, we're going to find those audience moments and behaviors. So I set up a study based on these 4 keywords across these sources. Let's understand how people are talking about this. what it is, I ran that tracker, and then I used Pulsar to break that conversation down by specific keywords. So we're looking at how people talk about the moments of drinking gin. We can see that, as we'd expect, celebration's number one. People like to celebrate with gin. We've got cocktails number two. Okay, so people are obsessed with cocktails. That's a pretty simple insight, but we might want to think about that later on in our study. This was more revealing. Where do people drink gin? Gin tastings took over as a conversation. And this is something that, when we looked back at comparing different months, wasn't as big a few years ago. So this is becoming a trend. People are going to gin tastings to try out different gins. Okay, so we might go, well, let's run with that. Let's create a series of campaigns around launching a gin tasting for unicorn tears. How can we do that in the right way? So now, to help you with that question, we can now focus in on that insight. How can we focus in on gin tastings and cocktails? So we're clicking on that segment. Now we're just looking at gin tasting as a conversation. And we're getting some rich verbatim data here. So here's a person at the top here from Australia who's visited Cardiff, talking about the gin festival. Fantastic. So we know this trend is real. There's real verbatim data behind it. We focused in on it. Now we want to immerse ourselves in that trend. So what can we do to uncover those details and themes? Now what I've done here is I've looked for gin tasting conversation within gin, and I've then visualized that conversation by the trending keywords. So what are people talking about? Now one thing that was clear was that Instagram dominated as a source. People were talking about gin as a channel over all the other sources I tracked, and it visualized in these trending keywords. These are surfaced by your audience, and I'm just going to go over to these ones here, or I could use this handy pointer. So few for our campaign that we might want to use are things like ginspiration, gintastic, mixology, gin lover. So we know that this is what our audience is organically talking about, so why don't we not use that in our own content? If we're going to launch a series of gin tastings, let's use these hashtags because we know that the audience is already using them. Okay, that's interesting. But now this is an image of the inside of my bathroom. No, it's not the image of the inside of my bathroom. This is how you can understand when your conversation is happening. So on the y-axis there, we've got the time of day, and on the x-axis, we've got the time. The darker the tile, the higher the volume of conversation in people talking about gin tastings. So we've definitely got a weekend conversation. We'd expect that. Forget about launching your campaign on Wednesdays. Probably not a great idea. But what I thought was more interesting is that the Thirsty Thursdays trend is probably taking effect here. So if you're going to try and maybe beat the noise of other people launching their gin tastings at the weekend, maybe you'd want to think about Thursdays. Maybe you want to use that as a keyword, throw in Thirsty Thursdays, see if that actually is consistent with that hashtag or that trend. You might want to do that too. The next thing I want to talk to you about is images. So I mentioned already that we were going to look at cocktails. So I've looked at understanding the gin tasting conversation. We've decided on how we might want to put together our campaign. Now, what cocktails are we going to use in the content, in the imagery? Now, we've partnered up with IBM Watson for visual recognition. Check it out, it's really cool. We've actually switched them on for 2 of the areas of our platform. What you can do with visual recognition now is every time an image enters the platform, you can analyze those images and understand the objects that are within those images. So it picks it out. It's an AI module, it's very clever. We launched it with them a while ago, and it was pretty basic. Now we're training it more and more, and it's becoming better and better. It can now even track colors, which is pretty cool for product. So what if we assign that to our search? So what I did is I assigned it to our search, and we can then visualize the most prevalent objects within gin tastings. And you'll notice that cocktail was consistently, and mixed drink were coming up as 1 and 2. Okay, so people are sharing loads of images as mixed drink and cocktails. That's not revolutionary, but it's better when we then look at the context. By clicking into those, we can have a look at all that user-generated content. Nice. That's interesting. Strange. Maybe we'll have a look at the food conversation and see, okay, is food playing a big role in this conversation as well? I didn't actually see that before. Okay, that's interesting from a quant point of view, but how can we understand what actual cocktails are the most prevalent? Because there's loads of different cocktails here. Well, what you can do is you can put it back into the platform, and you can then visualize it again, but we're just looking at those cocktail image tags. And you can see that these are the most popular used cocktails: punch, martini, and gin and tonic. Okay, so if this is what our audience is sharing, they're more likely to share an image of punch, then why should we not use that in our content? Because we know that the audience is sharing this. Okay, we've got that, and now you've got your killer insight. Thank you very much.